Welcome to the stream, guys. Today, I have a very special guest. You guys know him as the Navy's developer of the UFO patents. Salvatore Pais is back with me today on Hard Truths. Let's get started right away. Welcome, please, with me, Salvatore Pais. Sir, welcome to the live stream. How are you doing?
Hey, brother, how you doing? Four orbs. Uh, a pleasure to be here. Hello to all your followers, your viewers, your subscribers. Hi, guys and girls. All right, let me start off the bat. A quick disclaimer. None of the statements I make here, opinions, and so forth, are in any way associated with the United States Navy or the United States Space Force. I come here on this podcast as a private citizen. All the statements I make, all the opinions I make are my own. The United States government has absolutely nothing to do with this whatsoever. Now, give me 2 minutes because I really got to get this off my chest and let me finish this thought before the stream is over. So, whatever questions you got to ask, but let me start with this. I have a feeling I know how these things move, how these orbs. It's very, oh my God, it's so freaking simple. I couldn't sleep last night. So I was thinking, dude, it all has to do with a rather simple relationship between time and frequency. Could be frequency of spin or frequency of vibration. If you do a quick dimensional analysis, you'll see that time swiggle line or is on the order of 1 divided by frequency, just from a units point of view. But that also applies to the physics. If you apply the chain rule to that t, say equals a constant that has no dimensions, divided by, say, frequency of spin, I prefer frequency of vibration because you can vibrate much higher, as you and I shall discuss eventually. We're not gonna give numbers, but anyway. So again, t equals a constant, dimensionless constant, divided by a frequency, say, of vibration. If you apply the chain rule, we're talking about first year college differential calculus. All right, chain rule. If you apply the chain rule to this relationship, you're gonna get something that basically says minus delta t, t being time, is on the order of delta frequency, say delta omega, divided by omega square. It's that freaking simple. That minus delta t talks, you can say, to a reverse temporal excursion, if you want to go that way, or if you consider the Minkowski spacetime metric, one of the solutions to it, when delta x equal delta y equal delta z equals 0, one of the solutions to it is minus delta s for displacement equal c, the speed of light, delta t. Put in the delta t and notice how the signs all of a sudden become positive. It talks to a possible displacement. So, in other words, what these orbs are doing, they're bathing the aircraft in a sea of frequencies, non-ionizing radiation. It's key, and I'll talk to it eventually. We have to possibly, you, me, and Dave Rossi have to write a paper on this eventually. Maybe we'll do it in OSF. It's huge. It's so freaking simple and beautiful. But the whole idea is it basically give a method of propulsion whereby when you have this bath of non-ionizing radiation enveloping the aircraft, when you dial up the frequency just from the formula itself, and if you go back into the recording, you'll see the exact formula that I was talking about from application of the chain rule. You basically displace this thing, but it needs the Schwinger limit. It needs for the quote unquote conditioning of the vacuum. So it allows the Minkowski spacetime metric to occur in a, how should I say, a modified vacuum. Let's put it that way. A conditioned vacuum. We'll talk more about this, but this is how
Well,
they
I have
displace.
more questions
Yeah.
on that, and I want to get into it
Okay.
in a few. But what I want to really start with, though, with you is on your background, because there's so
Okay.
much confusion, I think, over it.
Ah,
First of all, let me ask you this: why are you doing public appearances at all? What is your motivation? And did you get permission from the Navy to do your appearances?
only as a private citizen. That's why I give the disclaimer at the beginning of all this. And
And what's your
uh,
yeah, go ahead.
again, I always speak to E cubed, brother. I always say we're not here to educate or in any way enlighten the enemy. E cubed. So I do not give numbers. I do not give ranges. I give concepts, ideas. Now, how to enable these ideas, you actually need numbers, you need specified condition environments, period. Go ahead.
Are are you doing it so that people will be privy to this information, knowing, not thinking that it's currently real? Because a lot of people think that your patents and your technology and the science that you push is pseudoscience. They love to
Oh,
say that, in fact. So I guess the question I'm getting is, what are you getting out of this?
I am I'm out of this. This is my way. Nobody will accept my papers. Nobody my way of how should I say of convincing the world that in any way my ideas were correct was to publish patents, and not even then these days are allowed anymore. Nowadays it's getting harder and harder to get certain ideas past the primary examiners. These are the guys that can actually have the office
Yeah.
action to allow the patent. So
What?
what I get out of this is my ideas being heard, number one, and number two, sometimes it's just for example, the Russians give us recently what oreshnik. It's called, I think, hazelnut tree. The exact translation from the Russian, and it's interesting because they're talking about subcluster munitions, like this hypersonic thing actually clusters away, or anyway. So the hazelnut tree speaks to clusters. I think up to five hazelnuts on one branch. So anyway, it's an interesting idea, but it just gives them an idea that we too have concepts that they have not heard of.
Yeah.
So in a way, it's um, how should I say? Be careful how you handle us, because if a private citizen can get on this and how should I say speak to advanced physics, even though they call it's called pseudoscience. Look, the truth of the matter is, in time, I don't know about space, but in time, all these ideas will be cleared. They'll be validated. They will be verified, just like your idea that MH370, what happened with it is correct. It's starting
Yeah.
to take fruition. So will my ideas one day be accepted. And they will, at that point in time, they'll say, oh, but yeah, of course.
So you put it out there so that in the future people will go, this guy, marked his stamp on the world in 2016 and 2019 and said this stuff's real. It may take you a while to accept it, but it's out there and the proof is there. Is that an accurate representation of your motivations?
You could say that, but also
Okay.
I represent all the people that were not heard, all the
Yeah,
people whose quote unquote pseudoscience
we're
never
standing on the
passed
shoulders of
mustered.
giants,
Oh,
right?
completely. They're for example, people like Harold Puthoff should have had a Nobel Prize, but because the man was
Oh, 100%.
associated with remote viewing, Stargate, and so forth, all these interesting names. But anyway,
So
because
let me
of
keep
that,
going because I
he
got a
was
lot of questions
ostracized by his
I
own
want to ask
physics
you.
community. Yeah,
Yeah.
go ahead.
No, we're gonna get to all these things. So, let's just keep it somewhat brief, and then we got a lot of questions to discuss here. So one
Go
more
ahead.
thing though, too, on your background is, so what is your background after, like, in the early 2000s? There's a gap between when you were at Case Western, you were working with NASA Glenn as a research graduate student, I believe, and then all of a sudden no one heard about you until your patents come out. Were you working with the Navy and other military organizations that entire time?
I wish there was a hiring freeze at NASA. And even though I had a graduate research fellowship and I would have been given a permanent government position once I had graduated from Case Western Reserve University with my PhD, because of that hiring freeze, they were not able to take me on. So I had to find the thing. I was part of a consulting engineering company. I think it was called Siska and Hennessy at one point, and there was a period that I was actually laid off. So I have an interesting past. But when I was laid off, I started reading a lot on my own and developed some of these physics concepts even back then. So
Okay, that's good to know. So, were you at the NASA Breakthrough Physics Propulsion program workshop? Did you attend it at all? It's been rumored that you were in attendance because of the crossover in when you were working with NASA.
I do not remember that, sir. I do not remember that. It's quite possible that maybe I was in one or two conferences, but no, I did not. My only paper at that time, I think published in '95, was in SAE. Uh, I think it was technical papers. It was something called the induced thrust effect, a method of propulsion. A rather interesting propulsion
Okay.
method. You can read that paper. I think it's still it's part of the SAE series of papers. You can Google it and find it.
Did you see the most recent UFO hearings of this immaculate constellation and all this stuff that was going on? Are you familiar with that?
Uh, you mean immaculate constipation? You,
So
you
I'll take
call
it
that?
as a yes, because have you seen
You,
this document that was released along with it that references you several times in it? And it looks to be a historical reference of all of
uh,
people related to the UFO community. Hal Puthoff's mentioned 93 times in it. Here it mentions your work in your PhD dissertation at Case Western, and it connects you to NASA Glenn again in a weird way, where it says that you were working at NASA Glenn, and Nick Cook, the author of Hunt for Zero Point Energy, he was told that NASA Glenn was working on breakthrough physics, which led to the creation of a device capable of high speed interstellar travel. Now I have to ask, like, are you connected to whatever's being talked about here? Because your patents are literally a interstellar, faster than light device. So, what is your thoughts on this
Nothing
here?
travels faster than the speed of light. Special
So they say.
relativity. We're going back to Einstein. Einstein is correct. Einstein shall always be proven correct. That's just the prophecy. You've heard it first here. Anyway, yeah, I don't think Einstein needs me as a prophet to let the world know that his incredible work will always be valid. Given a certain medium, again, as you well know, C equals C0 divided by n squared, where n is the index of refraction. So we are talking about within a given medium, this speed of light is a constant. It's one of the fundamental assertions of special relativity on which that fundamental stands. As a matter of fact, this whole thing that I spoke about in the beginning, using the Minkowski uh, space-time metric to show how the displacement of these orbs, um, how they take place, is based on special relativity, and in particular, this idea that speed of light within a given medium is constant. And no, nothing can go past the speed of light in a given medium unless you condition the vacuum itself. So, in other words, unless you condition the medium through which this traveling wave, whatever craft it is, occurs.
So is that a yes you worked on it, or a no you didn't work on it, or a
Oh
no
no,
comment?
no, absolutely not. As a matter of fact,
Okay,
I was in a whole different branch. I was in the fluid dynamics branch. I was working on
you were in
co and cross flow. Yeah, co and cross flow,
okay.
basically methods of heat transfer in space.
Okay, that's going to be relevant to it in a later discussion here. So, I got more questions I'm going to shoot at you here as well. Are you aware of technology that is beyond the public's understanding that the public would just say doesn't currently exist right now?
Absolutely not, sir. Other than my own applications, my own patent applications that I came from. I tell you, all these ideas I got by reading certain books. For example, my favorite remains to this day, and that's why I cannot, even though he is a person that cannot tolerate my work in any way, I will always hold Dr. Eric W. Davis in very high esteem, because one of my favorite books of all time is Frontiers of Propulsion Science, that he co-edited with Mark Millis.
Why do you think that he doesn't like you? Eric W. Davis, for the people in the chat who are not familiar, is probably the #1 world expert on wormholes and other advanced space propulsion concepts. Definitely has connections to black projects. John Ramirez of the CIA alluded to the fact that he had seen his name on bigot lists. So what is it? Do you think he's a gatekeeper of this technology? What do you think? Why is it you think he doesn't like you?
When I tried to publish, I think it was a Journal of British Interplanetary Society. When I tried to publish there, he really ripped into my work big time with several emails to some really good people that love my work. At the time was Herman David Froning, Froning. For some
I'm
reason,
aware.
his name is not so much mentioned, but at one point in time, it was him, it was Putov, it was Paul Murad. They were very high up in this, of course, with Eric W. Davis, who's always been there. Quite possible he is one of the gatekeepers. If you read that book, Frontiers on Propulsion Science, the section that he himself wrote, in which he argues for possibility of vacuum decay, the idea of vacuum melting, again, modification of the medium through which you travel for reduction of inertial forces. I mean, come on. The man is an absolute genius on the level of Putov, I would argue.
Yeah.
So problem is, of course, he doesn't like my work. Now, he says he doesn't like my work. Maybe it's for a different reason. Maybe deep down he does. That's quite possible. Maybe one day him and I will have a beer and laugh over this. I hope so. Because I hold him in very high esteem. Go ahead,
good
sir.
segue real quick, because we'll talk more about those guys in a minute. But so do you think UFOs are real? You think there's something out there called UFOs, unidentified flying objects, that are floating around in the sky?
You mean unacknowledged effing objects? Oh, absolutely. Absolutely, they exist.
So
Now,
what do you think?
this whole idea that they're phenomena bothers me. I'll tell you the truth.
We got this thing floating around here, right? This is my UFO floating around. It can be whatever you want. It can be a ball of light, it can be a flying saucer, whatever it is. Salvatore Pais, and by the way, am I saying your last name correctly? Is it Pais? Have I been saying it incorrectly this whole time?
It's Pais.
Pais.
So you've been saying it right.
Pais,
yeah, you've been saying
what is the energy source?
Call me Sal.
What is the energy source of this UFO? What in your opinion, what's the energy source? Where's the energy source coming from for this thing? It's floating around freely in the sky.
Well, quite possibly it's on board that craft, but exactly how it operates, whether it can manipulate the super force, in which case it's theirs, or it can generate certain conditioned electromagnetic fields which generate gravitational waves of high frequency, in which case it's ours, that power source would differ. So yeah.
So I don't understand how any power source could be on board, because again, Einstein, E equals mc squared. The amount of energy levels that would be required just to levitate for a prolonged period of time, the more mass you put in your craft, it's a self-defeating prophecy. The more energy it now requires for that thing to levitate. So how could it be something that's on board? To me, the only logical explanation would be that it must require an external energy source that's not on board. How would you respond to that?
I would beg to differ. Now, you and I have never had an argument, but in this, I must stand my ground. I believe that the energy source of whatever is on board. And why? Because it doesn't need to be something extremely big. Again, there's a lot of things that you can achieve via resonance and non-ionizing radiation, especially when you oscillate plasmas in a certain mode, certain fashion. I'll just leave it there. No numbers.
We'll talk about that in a second. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So let's you know what? I'm fine. I'm happy to have disagreements, and professional disagreements, and understand I'm still learning about this a lot. So anything where I'm off base, please correct me. Now going
No,
back to
no,
your patents. Go ahead.
but you must eventually elucidate your idea that that the power source could be external to the craft, because it's interesting. It's very
Yeah.
interesting. After all, you have to understand that if you consider something called God, what did he call it? Um, was it radiative energy? What did Nikola Tesla called
Yeah.
his
Radiant energy, the ether
radiant
energy,
energy? That's it.
0 point
Yes, yes,
energy.
yes. And he
Do
had
you
the ability to in a way, he had a very strange craft. I remember seeing it in one of his patents, but for some reason, it's very, you don't find that patent. Uh, it's it looks very
hard one?
strange. It looks almost like an asymmetric capacitor. Speaking of T.T. Brown. So anyway,
Do,
yeah.
do you believe in free
Anyway,
energy? Tesla did.
by that you mean 0 point energy.
Oh, however you think of it. I think of it as 0 point energy. What do you think? Do you think we can extract 0 point energy?
Some people seem to think so. So who am I to differ? Why why
So it's a
should
big
I say
dodge.
no to that? I I like to speak to things that I have knowledge of. And to me, I think the study of the superforce is very important as to exactly how, for example, ET guide their craft, because it seems to be far more than just something mechanical in nature, or rather electromagnetic. However you want to see it, it seems has to do with their consciousness as well, which is very, very strange. But go
Let's
ahead.
go back to your patents real quick, if that's okay.
Okay, sure.
So let's straight up ask: are your patents operable? You know, there's a big
Every one of them has been enabled. That's why
enabled's
they were
different than
accepted.
operable, though. Enabled, there's two different terms there, but operable would imply that one has been produced and exists.
All these are
Enabled means it can
theoretical
be.
concepts. All these are theoretical concepts. As far as I know, the only thing that's been attempted was the high energy electromagnetic field generator. And
Yep.
we were not able to obtain charges, electrical charges for those ultracapacitors higher than, say, 10 to the minus 8 coulombs. And
Yeah,
we need
but
at least 1 coulomb of charge to
so
generate certain effects.
that's a 8 orders of magnitude different than what you were trying to achieve. So how do you reconcile those results with your strong belief and opinion that your science is going to be proven to be real in the future? I mean, to me, there's a discrepancy. You go looking at this result, and the mainstream people are looking at it going, well, he had his high energy electromagnetic field generator result, and the result is 8 orders of magnitude too low. So how is it that you're so confident that can produce these energy levels?
Okay, from an electrified solid point of view, we should have gone with pelletrons, Van de Graaff generators. They can actually generate charges much higher than that. Then the whole idea was to prevent this object from arcing and losing the charge. So that would have to be done in specialized environments. I will not say exactly what can be done. But again, Van de Graaff generators, pelletrons, which are dynamic in nature, but you can think of them as as dynamic Van de Graaff generators. They have the ability of generating very high electrical charges. The whole idea is how do you keep the electrified solid from arcing, from giving away that charge? And that's not simple. Now, but I believe the Schwinger limit can be broken, but with plasma, not with electrified solids. It's possible that also there may be a way to engineer an electrified solid to bring about Schwinger limit breaking, but
Yeah.
it would be much harder from an engineering aspect.
Yeah,
All
so
right.
this is what I was getting at is that I saw one of your other interviews, and you did mention that, well, these solids can't obtain the energy levels that are required, but plasma might be able to. So what I'm hearing here is that you're saying that, well, the experiment that we didn't use the optimal medium in which to produce these energy levels, but that the plasmas, therefore theoretically could if we were using that. Just want to know, is that an accurate representation of what you're stating there?
In a way, but even the experiment itself, even though it had such a small charge on it, you have to remember there were two anomalies. If you fire that uh, the experimental results, which the Senate Armed Service Committee, the technical staffers that actually investigated the work that came and interrogated Dr. Sheehy over it, among also the Invention
Yeah.
Evaluation Board at the time. They concluded that these two anomalies had to be looked into because even with small charges, you could not dismiss them. It'd be different if it was a one, you know, uh, only one anomaly, but there were two, and they were specific to a particular biological sensation, which was reproducible. Look carefully into that, because if 10 to the minus 8 coulombs can generate that effect, can you imagine what a 1 coulomb of charge could do? Anyway, yeah.
Yeah. So what if these patents are so disruptive? And I've been hearing this all over. I've been hearing national security. Tucker Carlson was just talking to Clayton Morris, talking about he believes the truth of UFO disclosure is extremely disruptive. Then why would the Navy let these patents become publicly available? And I think I know the answer, but I want to hear your thought on it. These patents, your patents, represent a technology shift that could be free energy, certainly means propulsion mechanisms that can make us interstellar. Why are we telling everybody about it?
Given the 1951 Security Act, I asked myself the same thing. As a matter of fact, the patent attorney for the organization I was working for at the time, uh, in a way, questioned why was this let out into the open. Uh, to this day, I'm not sure. It could quite be that they could not find anything wrong with the physics, and yet to the Invention Evaluation Board, this sounded very much like science fiction. The only reason that they put them out again is that they couldn't find anything wrong with the physics. There was nothing. And as a matter of fact, you're going to remember that 5 times I went in front of the Invention Evaluation Board. And again, maybe the passion in my voice, maybe the fact that I went to the dry board and actually showed them the equations, showed them the exact derivation from Maxwell's equation, exactly what I was talking about.
Yeah.
Not once, not twice, not 3 times, 5 times I did this. And maybe I was able to convince them that I actually knew what I was talking about. And I do know what I'm talking about.
Well,
So
so do you think that Russia and China have this technology already? Do you think that might be a reason why they let it come out?
I have no idea whatsoever, but you have to understand that I truly believe that I'm not an original in this. I'm 100% sure that someone would have noticed this in the time of Oliver Heaviside, and the how should I say, the Heaviside version of Maxwell's equations coupled with a simple harmonic oscillator gives the Pais effect. Of course, not taking into consideration the cold plasma, the non-equilibrium effects, and so forth. That's a whole different matter. The whole idea of breaking the Schwinger limit. But someone would have realized that such electromagnetic energy fluxes of such high intensity are feasible at that time. And quite possibly because there were such great engineers. I mean, these were times that gave rise to people like Nikola Tesla. Uh, they were most likely they questioned. These were great engineers, man, and I truly believe that at that point in time, it's as if there was a timeline shift. Uh, it's as if quantum mechanics took over the minds of everyone, and instead of following, say, Maxwellian and Einsteinian physics on a on one path, everybody just went for the quantum mechanics way.
So, are you saying
Anyway,
that we can amplify energy? Is that, do you believe that that's possible? That we can just take energy in a circuit and amplify it using, say, like parametric oscillations?
resonance effects. Absolutely. Look carefully at one particular paper, IEEE plasma. It's published in IEEE Transactions on Plasma Science. The title of the paper is The Plasma Compression Fusion Device. It's the one paper that was truly accepted by one of the most prestigious journals in existence on plasma physics. This is IEEE TPS that accepted this. Um, and it's being cited by very high level Chinese research teams. One of them actually IEEE Journal of Cybernetics. You have to ask yourself why. It's very interesting, but look very careful in that paper, equations 5 and 6. There's one particular equation that speaks to a resonance effect that from that based on certain frequencies, based on certain conditions, you can have energy, great energy amplification started from modest power levels. Let's leave it at that. It's interesting that they have found that paper and they're really, really. It's interesting that they're citing it. It's as if they're holding it up and saying, "Yeah, look at this, interesting."
Yeah. So, I mean, amplification of energy to me is massive. And that's something that I took away from our first interview a year ago, which could mean that you can achieve energy levels, any energy level that you need for anything, which to me is extremely dangerous. And if that's true, that could explain why this science, this technology is kept secret for the interest of national defense. Whether or not we can pull infinite energy from the environment is a different question. And I think either of these being true, either pulling infinite energy from the environment or amplifying energy that we already have, are both just extremely dangerous, and the implications are huge. But if that's also true, it can't be kept hidden forever. And the reason why I point this out is because you've mentioned, and you mentioned again just now, that how could other scientists not have seen this in the Maxwell's equations? How could they not have seen this in the heavy sides version of the equations that are out there? It's just simple math. You look at the energy level, it's equal to something squared. You know, that's an exponential growth indicator. Um,
You
Now,
have
what I want to
very
do next, oh, go ahead if
astute
you have comments.
observations. Yeah, you have
Okay.
very astute observation, bro. I've noticed certain things about you. I gotta say it to your audience because I do respect you greatly. I think within the last year you've really come up. You've, it is amazing you are not of a physics pedigree because I believe that you can actually hold your own with almost anyone in the field if they're willing to give you a chance to speak. See, that's the big if.
Yeah, people
However,
don't
in my
like it.
opinion, you have the three P's, brother. All right. You have patience, you have persistence, and you have perspicacity, which leads to the big P. I believe that one day you shall prevail in your quest to prove MH370 is a very real thing.
I hope so. Yeah, and I think a lot about our last conversation where you said one of the things you said is, man, you said something like, I think about what Ashton would have to go through to prove that this stuff is real. And I think about that almost every day because, man, it had to go through a lot of crap in order to try to get this information out there, which is why I appreciate you being here. And actually, I want to ask you a few questions about the
Go ahead.
MH370 videos here and just get right to it. So, I mean, my first question is, when did you first hear about me or see those videos? Was it after I reached out to you, or had somebody reached out to you before that that made you aware of my stuff?
After, exactly when you reached out to me, I started looking into you because I had no idea what to expect. You told me that I was gonna be your first Hard Truths podcast, and that's a really cool name. I gotta say, Hard Truths, because this is the hardest truth imaginable. So you hit that nail right on the head, bro.
Yeah.
That's That's a great podcast name.
So
So
you
yeah,
saw it for the first time right after I got in touch with you. You saw it,
yeah.
and now I want to know what your impressions were when you watched. And I'm going to pull the video up here where we can kind of look at it together. I mean, what were your impressions when you saw specifically this video here for the first time?
Oh man, when I saw those orbs, I saw this thing, this one orb just start exactly what it's doing now. Just start to go around this thing. And all of a sudden it started join another one and then another one. And I said, oh my God, they're forming a bubble of non-ionizing radiation around this thing. There's no way. There's no way what's about to happen. I anticipated. Do you understand? I knew before that black hole happened. Let's call it a black
You
hole,
knew that
even
was going
though,
to happen
although
beforehand, just
I
watching
knew
that?
that would happen. I knew that would happen. That's why
Really?
when I said, this is it. This is the Pais effect. I, of course, it's, hubris. That's the only thing I got going for me, brother. That's not one thing I'm losing anytime soon. So
Have you ever seen
I said,
videos like this? Military videos like this before? Anything even similar or remotely similar to this?
uh, never ever. And even if I have, because
You wouldn't be able to
remember,
talk
at
about it?
one point I would not be able to discuss because that would give away methods. Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine. I had to ask anyway. Now, when you watch this part at the end with the slow mo, what are you thinking as an engineer here? Like, what is this? What does it make you think of when you're watching this?
Oh my goodness. Uh, I was absolutely, I could not believe that this was happening.
Why do you
At
think they were
first,
converging like that at the end?
they're actually focusing as much non-ionizing radiation around this craft in order to to condition the local vacuum around the aircraft, in order to form this wormhole opening, for one of the better. What's a wormhole? It's really a black hole connected to white hole. Whatever has an entrance will most likely have an exit. I do not believe in space-time singularities. I'm afraid Penrose was 100% wrong from this point of view. It never goes to zero. There's a quantum bounce. Ashtekar is correct. There's an Ashtekar bounce at the Planck scale. There's no such thing as a space-time singularity. And this whole idea of I can't even pronounce it. It's so idiotic. Every time I hear, oh, we're going to be pulled into the thing. And look, it's just a way to travel.
Do you think that there
You,
is a Casimir effect happening here, be offsetting a Coulomb repulsion effect when they converge together? Because when I see that conversion, I immediately think of Coulomb force. Distance between two charged objects being reduced, is going to increase your force exponentially. Do you
the way
think
I
that's
look at Coulomb force is really the force of repulsion between
Mhm.
particles of the same charge. That's
Yeah.
the way I view the
Yep.
Coulomb force. Again, the whole idea of why I thought that they were getting close and started to oscillate around this thing is to basically create that resonance effect that would build the field to the levels it would need to break locally the Schwinger limit. That's why I thought that they would start pulsating inward. You see how they start oscillating around this thing. And at
Yeah.
one point, you can actually see them change course, change
Yeah.
direction. That's also very interesting because
Yeah,
it
you mentioned that
takes.
with the vectoring earlier at the beginning as well, is that you thought that it must be related to time, and that
Oh,
part is
yes.
really
And it's
yeah,
so freaking simple because think
it
from a
is simple.
dimensional scaling point of view, just from a simple dimensional analysis. Time goes as one divided by frequency. It could be spin or vibration. It doesn't matter. The mathematics are similar for both spin and vibration. Anyone that wants to study that, go to first year um, a first year college book, and you'll see what the why I say the mathematics of spin and vibration are very similar. Now, the whole idea, once you have time is on the order of one divided by frequency, if you use the chain rule. So we talk about first year, college, first year, differential calculus, the chain rule. Okay, in this case would be a divided by b, where a, b are functions of, say, the same variable x. Just look up the formula and you will see that what you get once you applying the chain rule to t is on the order of 1 divided by frequency. You get minus delta t, so minus the change in time, is on the order of the change in omega. So in other words, the change in frequency divided by the frequency square. That comes right out of the chain rule. And you have to ask yourself at that time, just think Minkowski space-time metric. When you have delta x equal delta y equal delta z equals 0, so say you center this thing, you get as a solution of the space-time metric of Minkowski space-time metric minus ds equals c, the speed of light, times dt. Well, then minus dt, put in this formula, and you'll see how displacement can come from basically bathing this craft in a, say, frequency, a non-ionizing radiation. It's important, and actually it's very interesting because the Pais effect speaks to this. But anyway, why non-ionizing? Because it would have been easily detected on the infrared imagery if it was ionizing, right?
Interesting. Yeah, that's a good point. Now
So
we're going to talk
we're
more
talking
about the
about something small and then terahertz level. Very interesting. All right,
extremely
go
short
ahead.
frequency. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're going to talk more about that in just a second. There's a couple more questions on the videos. Do you think this video is a test? If you were to look at this as somebody who's works for the military, do you think, like, if what you're looking at here is real and this is, breaking the Schwinger limit as you're claiming here, do you think that this technology has been used before, or do you think anything that you watch this video leans you one way or another on that? And really what I'm getting
Look,
at here is, how long do you think we've had this technology if this video is real? This is 10 years old.
dude, if this is, look, the physics that I see here seems very plausible to me, given the Pais effect, given the idea of the superforce, given the idea of time is on the order of 1 divided by frequency that we just spoke of, coupled with the Minkowski metric. All this makes sense. Number one, instinctually, call it intuitive science and technology.
Yeah.
I see this as being extremely plausible. Number one. Number two, if this was a forgery and so forth, whoever did this would have had to be an expert in physics. Not only that, a mind of such great imagination would have.
Maybe Eric Davis made the videos. Now, real quick,
only a
let me ask
person
you
of
another
that
question.
nature. Go ahead, sir.
Why is this black? You can actually see this open up and you can see it close as well. Black is cold. We know, we can tell just looking at the engines literally on. Well, what does this mean when this is black, Sal?
Do you remember when you and I spoke? When I say you can almost see a refraction wave, as if this was fluid dynamics, as if what you're doing here, throwing a pebble into a pool. Have you ever seen a pebble thrown into a pool? When it enters, it forms this almost black-like cavity because light does not penetrate in the quote-unquote black hole that you're creating. There is, you can't see through it because you see, when think of it from a fluid dynamics point of view, this is a medium. The quantum vacuum is a medium, the so-called vacuum energy state, because a state represents a structure. And what we're looking here is a structure that has a certain vacuum energy. What you have done is condition that vacuum energy, manipulate it to the point that it no longer, at that particular point that you see so black, that's the actual nothingness. What you see around it is what you have done to achieve that nothingness. The medium, the quantum vacuum, is a thing. is a material entity. Look at Frank Wilczek and how he argues against Lawrence Krauss. When Lawrence Krauss goes on his diatribe about everything came from nothing. There's no such thing as nothing unless you yourself create it.
Yeah.
There
So do you
must
think this is
always
negative
be a
energy?
quantum vacuum.
Would you call this negative energy then?
I choose not to use those terms because I'm again, that's going too far. Even not even I dare uh, negative. See, to me, it's either not there or there's something to it. The idea of going negative to me is more like Cartesian coordinates. It's something that you yourself has. What is the word I'm looking for? It's a way that we're addressing things.
Mhm.
All right.
Yeah.
It's. I don't know. I got something on my screen.
Well, I think of
Don't
it as
know
just
why.
going below sea level, but I guess what you're getting at is that you're pulling energy, but the energy is still just normal energy. You know, you're just, in my opinion, you're just going below what we thought of as absolute zero.
Okay. All right. The way I would think of then is negative energy density that would speak to a
Yeah.
negative pressure. A negative pressure I can deal with because it means a suction pressure. And that's
Yep.
exactly what you're doing. You're creating a conditioned vacuum whereby the craft is sucked into that conditioned vacuum. That hole that you're creating is a zone of negative energy density. Then you and I are on the same level of speak.
That's what I'm
Yeah.
talking about.
Yeah.
Okay, so let me just get right to it. So, did you make those orbs, Sal, in in that video? I mean, I'm looking at your patents, and you have to understand that if I add up your patents, you have a magnetically confined fusion patent, high frequency gravitational wave, high temperature induced or piezoelectric induced high temperature superconductivity, inertial mass reduction for a transmedium craft, and high energy electromagnetic field generator. You add that up, and it looks a lot like an orb that could float around freely with no inertia and achieve superluminal speeds like we're seeing in those videos. And it might be the Navy recording that video as well. And it was in 2014, like right before you dropped your patents. So do you have some connection to that video?
Complete serendipity and synchronicity. Sometimes these things just happen. This is why I believe in something more than our quote unquote reductionist, materialistic, physical view of the world. I do not understand why it happened. I do not understand. Sometimes I wonder myself who gave me these ideas, who put them in my head. They've been there for some time. It all started with that paper, Conditional Possibility of Spacecraft Propulsion at Superluminal Speeds. Took me 4.5 years to get that paper published. Finally, it was published only when that other paper, High Energy Electromagnetic Field Generation, was published. And again, all the time I've had to work for it extremely hard to get these ideas through. And yet, at that point in time, it all worked out. You have to ask yourself why. Who gave the okay? What made certain things occur for this to happen then and there? I tell you, man, I think what we're dealing with here is a war between the children of darkness and the children of the light. And it's been going on for epochs, for eons. Sometimes they have a small victory, sometimes there's something happening. Everything
Sure.
is being driven toward a certain culmination point. I don't know what that point is. And
Sure. I
I know
mean,
this sounds weird, but
no,
I'm
it doesn't
starting
sound
to
that weird,
believe
but
it.
I mean, like, are you recognizing your patents in this video? Like, the thing I couldn't get past last time was why you were praising me so much when you were a Navy engineer and I was just some guy being like, hey, these videos are crazy. Like, can this be real? And I literally thought that like you had gone to the future and met a future version of myself, or maybe I went to the past or something. But then I thought about it some more and I went, this guy must be recognizing his technology in these videos. And there's not a lot of people on earth that would have that revelation. Like, that's why I asked you the question on what you recognize in this video. So are you recognizing your work or any component of your work in this video?
Let me just answer it this way, brother. If I was the creator of those orbs, I would be in a skiff within a skiff within a skiff. You understand? You would have never heard of my name. You would have never heard of my existence. I would be one of those people you have never heard of that was so incredibly genial that all the powerful beings in this world would come to me as I don't know, as an oracle, of science and technology. Kind of think of him. Think of me at that point in time, kind of like an invisible Elon Musk type. You know, it's that's not the case, brother. I am not the inventor of those orbs, although I wish I would have been. I'll tell
Do
you
you
the
think
truth.
that Hal Puthoff or Eric Davis know who made those orbs?
Quite possible. I mean, these are people of extreme brilliance, and I'm pretty sure that they know a lot more than I do.
Yeah.
Remember that they're associated with a certain individual by the name of Jay Stratton, who I was extremely fortunate to meet, although our paths did not intersect after that, to my dismay. But yeah, Jay Stratton was one of the best.
Do
I'm
you
not
ever
sure if
meet
he's
Hal
still around.
Puthoff
It's quite
or
possible he is.
you ever meet Hal Puthoff or Eric Davis in person?
No, I wish. Oh my
What about
goodness,
Tom
that'd be
Bearden?
great.
You ever meet him?
No, no, I haven't.
You know
As
who
a
he
matter
is,
of
though?
fact, the only person I met was Jay Stratton.
You ever meet a guy named Ken
Um,
Shoulders by any chance?
who?
Ken Shoulders. You ever meet him by any
I, I've
chance?
I've heard of Ken Shoulders, EVOs and so forth, but Bostic, another one, Boussard. Oh my goodness, I love Boussard. He's so funny. Everything he says about the idea that we'll never achieve fusion and a tokamak is so right on the money.
I need that quote because I'm 100% all in on tokamaks just being a scam. What was the quote that like he's never seen a star in the shape of a toroid before? Was that what his quote was?
Look up on YouTube. There must it
I
it
need that.
it must still be there. He gave I think it was a Google talk, and he was so funny in it. The whole audience, and we'll talk about these are Google scholars, that
Yeah.
the whole audience just died laughing. He said, "I do not recall ever seeing a star in the form of a donut." Something like that. But the way he said it was so comical. Everyone just broke down in laughter. It's like
So when did you figure out that it's all about plasma?
the mathematics. If you look carefully at the Pais effect, there's a omega squared term in there,
Yeah.
and that speaks to something that has to do with plasmas. I'll leave it there.
Yeah. So when did you figure that out? How long ago?
Oh man, it's
90s,
prior to
2000s?
no about 2015, something of that nature.
Oh,
That's
really? Recently?
when I started putting stuff on paper, when I said I must try to at least publish these, but nobody will take it. As a matter of
What was
fact,
your yeah. Go ahead.
that SAE paper on high frequency gravitational wave generation. Thank you very much for putting that out because it got a lot of views, brother. I tell you, you're starting to change the world, man. You'll see. But anyway, so I hope that these papers, with your support, are gonna be seen by a lot of people. We just need a lot of people looking at these, man. I'm done with the MIT physicists. I'm done with the Harvard types. They will never accept this. Number one, because of envy. Number two, I don't know, jealousy, uh, prestige, whatnot, and also the idea that an engineer thought these ideas before a physicist did. There's almost a unspoken war between the physicists and the engineers. Nobody likes
Oh,
to touch it. But
100%.
put it this way, even Einstein said the smartest man he's ever met was Tesla. So
Yeah.
the greatest physicist of all time recognized the
Engineers.
greatest engineer of all time. How interesting.
Yeah, it's
That
all
was
about
our first
engineering.
victory.
You should have given up on the academia a while back. It's all, I mean, media's dead, academia is dead. It's all about social media. It's all about how many views you can get on
It's
social
hard,
media. I don't think
man. It's hard. I
academia has
come
realized it
from
yet.
them. I am one of them. You have to understand.
I know.
I'm of a certain pedigree. I went through that process. I sweated blood and tears for that PhD qualifier. I was in that freaking room for 6.5 hours after doing 10 days trying to solve an unsolvable problem. Basically, didn't sleep for 10 days. And then, anyway,
When did,
it's
let
so
me ask you another quick
once you
question.
go through that process, it's hard to turn your back. These are my people. When your own people, when your own tribe does not accept you, what do you
Yeah.
do? Anyway, go ahead.
I want to ask a couple more questions, and then we got Dave back in the back room. I'm going to bring him up, and then we can chat about some more science. And I'm going to ask you guys about some UFO stuff as well. But I want to get your thoughts real quick on cold fusion, Pons and Fleischmann.
Oh
So,
boy.
are you
Oh,
familiar with their work at
oh,
all?
you
And I
mean
don't need.
do you mean low energy nuclear reactions?
No, sorry, Sal. It's just like UFOs. I'm not rebranding into UAPs. I'm calling it cold fusion still. Some people are
Oh,
calling it low energy
dude.
nuclear reactions. Now the new rebrand too is catalyzed fusion that they're calling it.
Dude, but it's
Um,
all a whole different physical mechanism. We're
yeah.
not talking about very high temperatures, very high pressures. This is a whole. It's as if you're coercing. Not you're not forcing. You're basically tantalizing. It's like having a really ugly dude and a beautiful supermodel meeting on the dance floor. All right, and all of a sudden you see the supermodel being attracted toward this really ugly dude. But why? Because he has certain movements. He's doing the babaluli. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, he's got those moves, brother. So that's what I'm talking about. Look, there are many roads that lead to Rome. The whole idea is to get to Rome, but there's only one via Appia. Remember that. There's only
Well,
one
you
via
just
Appia.
answered like half my cold fusion questions in one response, which I appreciate. Because I was going to build up to the point that I think that cold fusion is not being judged based on the right metrics by the right results. Because, like you said, it's a completely different beast. We're not dealing with high temperatures. I've heard you mention the Maxwell-Bozeman equation or
Boltzmann.
Boltzmann.
Maxwell
Yeah,
Boltzmann
Boltzmann. Sorry,
equation.
Maxwell-Boltzmann uh, curve, and that's used to figure out in hot fusion like where the ignition level, the ideal temperature is for the ignition level. But when you're dealing with cold fusion, you're dealing with a completely different mechanism. You're not dealing with temperature as your main variable. You're actually
Correct.
dealing with like this pressure gradient where you're just like you said. I love your analogy of the fat guy
The ugly
dancing up
dude
in
with
the
the
supermodel.
supermodel. No, he's
Yeah,
not necessarily fat because when you have a certain weight, it's hard to do certain inertial reduction moves. But again, the whole
got it.
idea is that the guy is not quote unquote on the same level as the chick. But she's extremely attracted to him. Why? Because of the movement in the ocean.
Yeah. Now,
Anyway,
so you hadn't seen Ken Shoulder stuff, but you're familiar with his work because basically Ken Shoulders is saying we can produce these self-coherent balls of plasma that are self-sustaining, self-organizing. They are long-lived, and when I look at that, I go, "Oh, that's what we're looking at in these videos. We've got this ball of plasma that's not dissipating. You look at the heat signature. Heat signature there is uniform with the background. Have you read Jack Nachamkin's force-free time harmonic plasmoids paper by any chance?
I have not, but please send it to me.
Okay. So you didn't get your inspiration from any of those guys when on your plasma fusion confinement.
Very simple stuff. Everything simple. As a matter of fact, the Navier the patent attorney, who happens to be a very good friend of mine, his name is Mark Glut, Glut, of
Yeah, I
Ukrainian
saw his
descent,
comments.
American Ukrainian, but Glut is pronounced, not Glut. Glut. Mark Glut. He basically said the Pais effect is like a bag of chips. You keep on taking one after another, and you keep on wanting some more. The whole idea is that the same physical phenomena can apply to different applications. That's the whole thing. And when it came to the plasma compression fusion device, everything just, I actually saw the dynamic fuses, how they would have to work, how they would counter rotate. For the first time in my life, I remember reading up on Tesla having a similar thing, having run through his mind. He already knew his invention would operate before he actually put it into practice. I saw that plasma compression fusion device working. I know it will work.
Yeah, and the
Anyway,
reason why I bring it up is that in Jack Nechamkin's paper, 1992, Force-Free Time Harmonic Plasmoids, he is specifically bringing up the energy levels, and that are these massive energy levels. Hal Fox, that worked with Ken Shoulders, also brought up the energy levels. I have a link to that. But in here, he's also saying it seems like that the temperature would be equivalent to the background atmosphere, which is what we see in those videos. But then down here at the bottom, it says Casimir forces will arise in situations where, owing to the high conductivity of the plasma due to the large number of free electrons, components of the electromagnetic 0 point background energy cannot penetrate uniformly into the plasma. This will result in a lower energy density within the plasmoid and an apparent pressure gradient due to the vacuum. Now, I read that and I read what you just mentioned, and then I go, wow, you haven't read this? Because it sounds like you're saying the exact same things, that you're pushing out 0 point energy from a certain region of space, changing the permittivity of that region of space, which changes the speed of light. And now you're creating a bubble there. Is that, how would you read that?
I would read it as a plasma ball.
Plasma
That's what I
ball.
was created within my dynamic fuses. But no, this is 100%. This is on the record. I have never read that paper before nor seen it.
Okay.
Again, all the Pais effect inventions are original. They came out of the Akashic field, let's call it.
Okay. Let's bring Dave on if you're ready, and we can just kind of nerd out a
All
little bit.
right, my brother.
Okay.
I
Hey,
want to
I see
see
him
him.
smiling in the background. Here we go. Let's
I
see how this
want to
works.
see him.
Hey, Dave, how's it
Hey,
going?
Hey,
hey,
Great to
my
see you.
brother.
what's
What's up?
happening? What's going
How
on,
you
guys?
feeling, man? How you feeling? You okay?
Much better. Thank you. Thank you. Much better. This has been a
All right.
fantastic stream. I've been watching from the beginning. This is beautiful.
Ah,
Awesome. Yeah.
dude.
Thank you guys both for being here. I want to talk some science. I want to talk some physics. But before we get into that, let's talk a little bit about this UFO community stuff that's going on. Actually, I want to start with the letter that Sal, you submitted through Dave Rossi here. We got everybody here. Got Dave banned actually on Twitter. I don't think he's
Oh,
unbanned
shit.
yet still,
Yeah.
by the way. So
That's
Okay.
Elon
fine.
Musk, anybody's out there, let's get
Sorry,
this man
brother.
unbanned.
Yeah, come on, Elon. Just watch the last Project Unity pod. Come on. See what I have to
So
say about you. Come on.
yeah, and I watched that
Do
Project
Dave Rossi.
Unity
Yeah,
interview,
come on.
and in that interview, you actually were asked about something similar related to this letter. The thing that stuck out in the letter to me was that you say you believe in human technology,
Man-made tech.
and yeah, and Project Unity Jay asked you about this and said, you know, so are you saying that we could have figured this out? You kind of allude to the fact that we humans could have figured this out. But the thing that I took away, which I want to know your opinion on, was that it almost seemed like you were saying that, like, we've figured some alien technology out, and now we're trying to weaponize it in a way that the aliens would not have used the technology. Uh, Man, that was a freaky thing. Is that what you were trying to say? Is that what you're trying to get across when you talk about using human technology and that you believe in human technology, or what did you mean by that?
No, what I was saying is that any reversed engineered technology based on quote unquote these ancient, antique, whatever ET craft that we happen to find in a pyramid like structure or so forth. The Let's call them the non-human, or rather the extraterrestrials, or who knows exactly what they are, but whoever these individuals are, whatever these entities are, okay, they would know their own technology far better than us. So if, God forbid, there was an armada, say by Proxima Centauri, about to attack our solar system and take over Earth for its natural resources and so forth, we will stand a much better chance not having to deal with a Trojan horse. So, in other words, they know their own technology. Anything developed based on their own technology, they can defeat against. What could take them by surprise is man-made technology, something that Oliver Heaviside and Tesla dreamed up, say. You understand? That
Yeah,
simple
well,
harmonic oscillator hooked into, say, a Tesla coil of some sort, generating a certain plasma vibrating a certain frequency, could generate something wild that can take this shit down. That's all.
I mean, that's a pretty crazy thought to think that, like, oh,
Isn't
aliens
that
have
a
figured
beautiful
out some
thought?
plasma, but we figured out how to turn into a death ray because of
Woo! Death
Tesla. If
ray.
that ends
I
up
haven't
being the
heard
truth,
that in a long time. Yeah, the
that,
Tesla death ray. Hey, speaking of President-elect Trump, ask him what's up with his uncle over there. I
yeah.
bet you he
Well,
knows certain things I don't.
speaking of that, let me hear both your guys' opinions on, do you think that there's going to be any difference in the new administration? Do you think that who administration's in charge makes any difference at all when it comes to disclosure of this technology and UFO stuff?
It'll be a fight, in my opinion. Who's gonna win? I don't know, but it'll be a fight. Um, it's weird. There's some people that are in the position to um, bring these things forward, that are saying to certain individuals or groups that if you do this strategically and correctly, there might be a way to do it. And there's other people that don't ever want it to see the light of day. From where I am, my little corner of the world, and I'm not speaking for Sal or anybody else, but from what I see, it's an ongoing fight at the moment. That's what I see. I hope I'm wrong. I hope it's more beneficial and forthcoming. But that's what I see at the moment.
Sal, what about you? Do you think the administration makes any difference as somebody who's worked on the inside with the military?
Even as a private citizen, given that I am a government employee, I'm still obligated under the Hatch Act to reserve any all such opinions. Uh, However, from an alternative idea point of view, this whole idea of camps, again, the children of the darkness versus the
Yeah,
children of the light. This is an
yeah,
ongoing war. This
yeah.
will not stop. This will not change in any way, shape, or form. I'm not even sure if any side should win, because light cannot exist without darkness.
Now, let me jump onto that then. So Peter Thiel was on Joe Rogan, and one of the things that he said was, what if aliens are getting into Earth and they've got this warp drive technology, this fancy technology that's basically your patents, that potentially they would have to be a civilization that's either all angels or all demons. And he says that because he's saying that we would either have to be all perfectly altruistic or some type of totalitarian pre-crime minority report situation where we can all hear each other's thoughts so that nobody would use this technology to annihilate the entire civilization. Do you agree with that? What are your guys' views? We'll start with Sal.
Oh my goodness. Again, this unfortunately, this physics can be greatly weaponized. I mean, it can make, say, the Oreshnik look like a freaking, I don't know, a pencil thrown in the air that comes apart, in clusters of pencils. Still a fucking pencil. Excuse my language. Uh, so I pass it on to Brother Rossi, please.
I think it's a mixed bag. And what I mean by that is, for example, if you have a species that is more advanced in a certain field than with regards to, propulsion or a form of engineering the space-time metric. In my opinion, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're entirely altruistic or entirely evil completely. If we think of the notion of what you've studied quite a lot about on your shows, Ashton, of fractals, and there's talk of on the spiritual side, people talk about higher self, lower self, etc. It's possible some of these species may be more matured, but again, when we think of the notion of pure philosophical perspective, that doesn't necessarily mean within our, I guess you could say, vector of understanding that they're doing good or bad relative to us or even relative to them. I think it's a mixed bag. I think it depends who we're dealing with, how, why. I think we're dealing with a mixed bag. I really do. That's just my opinion, but.
So all these UFOs have been an increase in sightings in the last just week alone. Where do we stand on what these things are? Do we think this is a craft with somebody inside it? Do we think this is a plasma orb that's floating around? Do we think it's a drone with lights connected to it? Do we think it's some combination of all of the above? Where do we stand with what we're seeing?
If I could say really quickly, and forgive me, Ashton, because I don't mean to deviate from when you guys had talked in the beginning of the stream about a power source on the craft. I just want to say, in the way I interpret it, and again, as Brother Sal has said, there are many different ways you could skin this cat. So one way that I interpret it is that the craft, in some cases, may have occupants on it. There is, in my opinion, a power source, but I would argue the power source acts more as a facilitator between the local vacuum and the actual what's inside the craft. Now, inside the craft, you're going to have the mass of everything weigh completely differently than everything outside of the craft. So you'll be able to have something that would be hypothetically, many, many hundreds of pounds heavy on the craft, but from an external observer or measurer, the craft and all the objects in it weigh almost zero in its weight. Now, in terms of I think we're dealing with motherships. I think then from there we're dealing with probes, like orbs, probes. The way we send, we have a Boeing 757, and then maybe we throw some drones off of it to surveil a certain area on the land before we send our soldiers in, for example. We could be dealing with something like that, perhaps.
So, do you think that Element 115 is a real thing then?
Here's what's interesting. I have to say, I go back and forth. I really do, because when you look at specifically Edward Teller, what Edward Teller's lawyers had said about when he met Bob Lazar, or allegedly, I'm paraphrasing here, but Edward Teller's lawyers, shortly before Mr. Teller died, had in the late 90s said, our client never met Mr. Lazar, but if he did, then they never spoke. And if they never spoke, then they didn't meet. But if they did meet, then they never engaged. So it was a very carefully crafted response with regards to if they actually met or not. Do I think Element 115 is real? I think that's Moscovium, if I'm not mistaken. I believe it's been reproduced in a German lab for like a fraction of a second, if that. I think it's possible. At the same time, if I could just say quickly, I think the reason why nobody wants to admit any truth with regards to the Bob Lazar story and the S4 stuff is because just by admitting to it, you're incriminating yourself if you had any knowledge on it, because the programs were so off the books that it's basically they're trying to whitewash, not make a witch hunt, so to speak. And there's arguments about that. Do I lean towards the way generally what Mr. Lazar says being true? Yeah, my opinion. Yeah.
Sal, what about you? What do you think about Bob Lazar? What do you think about Element 115?
I don't know about Element 115, but one thing that he said is that the sports model, this thing that he was describing, it's as if it was 3D printed out of the fabric of space-time itself. That speaks directly to the superforce. It's a superforce that acts on the spatial temporal geometric structure locally to create energy density, hence matter. Generation of matter directly, as if 3D printed out of space-time itself, the nature of our reality. So I truly believe Lazar is correct.
If I can give another hint as well, Lazar had talked about his gravity A wave and gravity B wave. In my opinion, I think what he's describing is identical. What he described there is dealing with DC gravity and AC gravity. There's certain researchers, I won't say the names, but they stumbled upon the same thing about 15, 20 years ago, before they disappeared, dealing with there being two types of gravity that could be gravitational waves that could be generated electromagnetically, specifically dealing with, again, static gravity and then an alternating current type of gravity. So I'll just leave that there. There are consistencies when if people have the resources to dig deep enough, there are consistencies that you'll find between various researchers and what Lazar said in many regards.
You think Ming Li is one of those researchers? Eugene Polkanov? You think there's?
I don't want to get anybody, including Brother Sal or myself, in trouble. So that's why I'm just going to say there were researchers out there.
Speaking of which, brothers, at this point in time, quick interruption. Sorry, Brother Ashton. Sorry, Brother Rossi. Neither Brother Rossi nor Brother Ashton nor myself, I'm not speaking for them, but I'm 100% sure they're of the same mindset. None of us are in the mindset or the thought of suiciding ourselves. Just in case anybody out there gets brilliant ideas.
Whenever you talk about Ming Li, you gotta just put that.
What I will say is that there are experiments that are slowly considered now as being part of what's been called extended electrodynamics. They're somewhat being discussed at an unclassified level, dealing with certain objects that may or may not be rotating, where they either gain or lose their weight in very minuscule levels, and there may have been attempts to scale that, and if the attempts to scale it were successful, they would probably not have made those results public.
Yeah, I think that it really comes down to plasma, though. You know, a lot of those results, one of the things I've always noticed about them is that the results are never really that great. But when it came to these EVOs, there's something amazing about it, which is that these electrons are clustering together in huge densities that they wouldn't normally cluster together in something called cold plasma.
If I could say this is the part where I'll just openly say it, and this is what I'm about to say here is not a reflection on any of the views that Brother Sal has. I just want to clarify that in any way. These are my own views, but I would dare to say that when we talk about, again, the words, negative energy, it's possible that electricity, the way that we normally think of current as being hot, it's possible it can get cold if you can reverse its entropy. And I'll leave that there. Again, if I've said this before, I think a year and a half ago, if people look into what the source charge problem is, that has still been unresolved in mainstream physics. And I don't even think many people even know about it today. The electrodynamicist experts of many years ago did the source charge problem, dealing with where energy actually comes from. And I'll just leave that there. I think there's something with the vector and scalar potentials. That I'll leave that there.
Sal, do you believe in the ether?
I believe in the quantum vacuum.
Well, tomato.
Well, the luminiferous ethers. Again, brother, man, you got to remember my tribe. And you're 100% right. I will always try to be part of them because I am part of them. And that's why it hurts so much to be called a pseudoscientist. That's why I truly hope somebody out there will run a quick experiment of the Pais effect and prove me right.
Well, I think what I'm about to say here too. One final thing. Forgive me, Sal, for interrupting you. What I'm about to say here is going to be very controversial, and it does not represent anyone else's views in any way. I believe that the energy densities that Sal has been discussed in his amazing papers and in his patents are achievable when you have the implementation of negative energy working in a very caduceus-like form, where the cold side or the negative side offsets the heat or positive side, so you can attain these densities in a certain way that do break the Schwinger limit. That is not considered to be mainstream in any capacity. I probably get made fun of a lot if I said that in open groups, although again, many closed groups I've spoken to have acknowledged this. So you start getting into controversial territory, but I am very confident that Sal's inventions are very feasible.
Yeah, do you think it's Do you guys think that it's analogous or exactly the same as the dynamic Casimir effect? Do you think the dynamic Casimir effect is breaking the Schwinger limit and causing photon pair production to begin?
I think if you can use resonance to scale up what the Casimir effect does, then you can break it. Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
What about you, Sal? What do you think about dynamic Casimir effect?
Interesting mechanism. Again, quite complex for my palate. But then again, I go with simple things trying to solve complex problems. I've always believed that the solution to all complex problems is simple depending on perspective, how you look at it.
So
there's a
go ahead.
patent regarding the Casimir effect. Sorry, Ashton, that I'll send to you that your audience may be interested if you haven't seen it already. Dealing with deploying a certain type of monoatomic gas inside the cavity to lower the ground state of the vacuum fluctuations to extract more energy from the potentials that now become real observable particle fluctuations. And then if you can use resonance to scale that up, I'm not going to, with respect, I will not go into how to engineer that practically on the stream here. But if one could use resonance, I think that there's an entire field of physics that Tesla was onto, that brother Sal is onto very strongly, that is completely been whitewashed from the field.
Yeah, are you talking
put it
about
out
Garrett
there.
Model and Bernard Hayesh's Casimir cavity patent that I'm going to steal in a couple of years when it expires?
There's another one as well. It's from some Asian individuals, but they, I think they're, I'm not sure if they're Chinese or not. But anyways, the point is you have to think geometry.
Yeah, that was one thing that I never expected with a lot of this is how much of a difference frequency plays a role. So,
Speaking of
Sal
which,
talked about,
Ashton, you hit on something when you said frequency. It's really important. Okay, that frequency square term. If you get me in a skiff with some very important people, Putov can be there, W. Davis can be there, of course, Dave, everyone that matters, Jay Stratton, everyone that matters and has some say in this whole thing, possibly Elon down the road. I can show in less than 5 minutes when I'm talking about that, given that omega square term, we can break the Schwinger limit.
Do you think those guys don't know that though? Like, I feel like they have to know.
No, they know. They know. No, they know.
And that's why I'm not. That's why I'm not being brought into a skiff and questioned. Anyway, yeah.
So that kind of goes to my next point is, Sal, you told me, you said, if you go on Joe Rogan or Tucker Carlson, bring me with you. So that still hasn't happened, but that offer stands out there. If Tucker Carlson or his people are watching or Joe Rogan's watching, what is it that you want to say to Joe Rogan or Tucker Carlson? Why do you want to go on?
Unification, brother. The only way this earth can survive, given what is coming. And I tell you, what is coming will be a test like humanity has never seen before since the flood. The unified earth can withstand it. It takes advanced physics to deal with it. If we do not come together as a united earth, leave aside all our differences, enjoy the idea of Homo sapiens sapien, jubilate in the fact we are humans, we shall fall like we've never fell before. We had a chance after the flood, given the historical narrative. I don't think we'll have a chance this time unless we come together before the event occurs. I will not say what the event is. I dare not even think it. Because your thoughts become actions under certain conditions. So it's better you leave it on thought.
I mean, I think it's kind of important we talk about it because people out there speculating, there's so much confusion in the UFO community about, is there going to be a Project Bluebeam? Are the aliens invading us? Are we going to get hit by an asteroid? Like, you know, sure, your thoughts can manifest reality, but how do we stop something unless we are ready talking about it in the open? You know, so what are we dealing with here? Are we dealing with alien invasion? Are the aliens going to come out of the water? Are they going to come back from, you know, they visited us 50 years ago? Or, you know,
If I could say a natural cycle of the planet that is in harmony with the cosmos, that lifts the veil energetically on certain phenomena that were always right in front of us, but we're too energetically covered up for us to notice. I think that Sal's technology could help stop it. My opinion is that I could be wrong. My
It's not
opinion
my
is
technology, it's our technology.
sure. Thank you. Sure.
We've been
Thank you,
speaking
brother.
of this nonstop. So now it's our
Thank,
technology.
thank
And
you.
not
Thank
just
you.
the three of us, the entire
Yes.
world.
Yes.
That's
I
I believe these patent applications were by some great act of God. I don't know what else to
yeah.
call it. They were led into the public consciousness to facilitate a possible way out of the
Yes.
nightmare.
There's what I'm going to say here has already been public knowledge by Mr. Boyd Bushman, the controversial Lockheed Martin engineer who made a few videos before he died, dealing with the possibility of what's called the Apophis comet, in correspondence with a potential pole flip of the planet. It's possible every 12, 13,000 years, the planet and we as a species go through a cycle. And we may be coming up to the end of that cycle once more.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I've heard all the doomsday stuff, but it's something like that. There's nothing we can do about it. You know, the poles flip, whatever. I mean, doesn't matter where you're going to be. You're just luck of the draw at that point.
That's why,
Asteroid, I feel like we could annihilate. And if the aliens come invade, heck, if they don't have teleportation technology or annihilation, whatever the heck we're doing, then, you know, good luck to them. Now, this is what I asked. Like, let's assume that the MH370 videos are real. I already know they're real, but let's just assume they are. You know, we're role playing here. When would you guys assume human beings would have figured out not just that we can make a floaty ball of plasma, superconductive harmonic orb, as I called it? When would we have figured out that they combine them together and all of a sudden you break the Schwinger limit? You know, because one orb, the energy levels are large, extremely large. But by
are you
itself,
asking are you asking about the historical timeline, like in the last 80 years when you think we as
when do you
humans-
guys think that, I mean, do you think humans have figured it out? The biggest drama is that a lot of people, especially in the UFO community, are sure that what we're looking at in those videos represents non-human intelligence, maybe. But I think that you guys would also argue that, well, humans, like this goes back, the math and equations go back to the early 1900s, which is a long, long time ago. So my question is, you know, what do you think that humans have had enough time to reverse engineer or figure this out by ourselves? And when do you think we would have taken it to the next level where it's like now we're just zapping these things together and poofing planes out of existence?
If I could say very quickly, in terms of the historical timeline, I'm not an expert on that. I don't claim to know when, what happened, and where. We have to keep in mind a lot of these alleged special access programs, after they're completed or the compartmentalized programs are finished, they kind of get shredded and nothing gets put on record, so they do get washed away to history. So as to who specifically cracked it first, I don't know, but what I can say to that is look at what brother Sal was able to do with not to speak for him, but with what I believe was a $400,000 grant from the DoD. Look at what he was able to do just with that. Imagine if you had, 20, 30, $100 million, what you could do.
Yeah. And the one thing I learned about this science is that, man, super weapons are cheap. Like this stuff is not relative to how much people spend on other projects. The government's been wasting on hot fusion. We spend like nothing. on this
Well,
stuff. We could
it's
be
interesting. Brother Sal mentioned earlier the Van de Graaff generator, and that speaks to particle accelerators and so on. And it's interesting when you look at the history. I'm not saying this in a good or bad way. If there are photos from MIT's website of Dr. John Trump, Donald Trump's uncle, with Mr. Van de Graaff in the 1920s or 30s, looking at a big version of a Van de Graaff machine, we can say that a Van de Graaff machine is an early version of what the CERN particle accelerators are. So I think something was understood back then.
Couple
Yeah.
the Van de Graaff generator with a Tesla coil. Put it this way. Oh
Yeah.
wow. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Sal, what do you think about that? I mean, and do you think it could be a combination of things going on as well? That
Brother, I have a slightly different. I go from books because they show people, especially older books or books that are no longer in print. Once upon a time, we used to read actual books, hard copy things that we used to open, and actually the leaves we would turn one by one. Very interesting thoughts,
Yeah.
very interesting ideas. There's one such book by Charles Fort, Fort. It's called The Book of the Damned. The Damned, Damned. What we're about to become. Anyway, it's called The Book of the Damned. And in chapter 12, he says something incredibly profound. He says, I think we are property. In that, I believe somebody has ownership over us.
so you think we're on a prison planet?
Brother, there's so many things we don't know. Look, man, a lot of people have been making fun of Graham Hancock. A lot of people have been making fun of anyone that has tried to point us. For example, Dr. Joseph Farrell that's been trying to point us to the idea of the Enuma Elish, the book of creation, the war among the gods, the tablets of destiny. You think all these were just, wow, mythical ideas that we just came. How about Troy, my brother? How about Troy? Schliemann, with a copy of the Odyssey under his arm, found what we think is now Troy, possibly various vestiges of what Troy is. So if you can do that with a book that supposedly was written by some dude called Homer, then how should I say? Imagine what you can do with actual books that supposedly were written by the gods. Who were the Anunnaki, the children of heaven and earth? What do we not know about our own civilization? In Graham Hancock's own words, are we a civilization with amnesia? I believe we are.
I'm a big fan of that thought process as well. I mean, civilization doesn't go far back enough, in my opinion, for us to be as advanced as we are today. Which I do think there's a lot of crossover between that work and Joseph P. Farrell. I mean, I found a clip from him back in 2014, roughly a day or a few days after the plane disappeared, and he was talking about the United States using a teleportation superweapon on the plane, which I don't think nobody was talking about that except for him. I'm surprised that he hasn't wanted to reach out and talk to me just because of
Dr. Joseph P. Farrell is one of these polymaths. Even though he has a certain degree in something to do with the original church fathers, I believe he is of the Eastern Orthodox religion. I think he was of the Protestant religion or maybe Roman Catholic at one point in time. But anyway, his doctorate is in theology, religious studies. The way this man researches, the profundity of his work, the way that he has stepped into works, for example, by Igor Vitkovsky. We'll talk about the Glocke, the truth about the Wunderwaffe, among other things. All right? No need to get you demonetized, so I'll just leave it there.
Yeah, please don't. We're doing such a good job right now.
Brother. I like you a lot. As I loved up Dave Rossi.
We're talking about plasmas. We're talking about all kinds of crazy stuff. So let's just
Yeah.
keep it rolling. You guys think plasma's conscious? Like, what do you think? What do you think life is at
Read
that
The
point?
Demon in the Akur. It's the
Yeah, that's
latest
the
book
Joseph P.
by
Farrell one,
Dr.
right?
Joseph P. Farrell. Read very, very carefully what he has to say about Dr. Hans Alfvén, Nobel Prize winner for magnetohydrodynamics, one of the greatest minds in magnetic fluid dynamics ever to exist. See what this man thought about the sentience of plasmas under certain conditions when driven far from equilibrium. See what he has to say. The
It's
very fact
interesting.
that this man brings about ideas from different domains, is able to read his Secrets of the Unified Field. Amazing book, hardly ever mentioned. See what he has to say about Gabriel Krohn and all those greats that once upon a time existed on the surface of this earth. Charles Proteus Steinmetz, a giant of a man. The man was of a very small stature, but as far as intellect, this man was a giant among giants. See what
What do
Charles
you
Proteus Steinmetz has to say about impulses and electric discharges. Anyway,
do
go
you
ahead.
think that there's a connection between hypersonic spy planes from the 60s and the 70s and balls of plasma floating around now? I guess what I'm saying is that these hypersonic planes would use a plasma sheath in front of them. As far as I can tell, that's the earliest documentation of the military using plasma to achieve extremely high velocities. Do you think there is something inside of these plasma orbs, or do you think they are something that's produced externally and then achieve some sort of equilibrium? Or do you think there's a combination?
Brother Rossi, take it.
Oh, see, this is the
Yeah,
questions are
I like
the,
that.
the questions are very good, Ashton. That's why I stay quiet when
Very good.
yeah. Well, I think I don't mean to dodge. Let me just say this. There are certain papers out there, I think from the 1950s and early 1960s, before he told his colleagues that he was leaving his academic community, his friends behind, and going into a world that they wouldn't accept because it seemed too crazy at the time. If you look at the work of what Gabriel Krohn did, you'll find that there was discussion of things like the mention of negative resistance being feasible. But then in that same paper, he mentions that it is, but it isn't, almost as if he was forced to have to, there was censorship of his work. I think that if you look at the possibility of the ether acting as a sort of negative resistor, what that would do in combination with the plasma sheath would inhabit certain properties and phenomena that classically, as we even think now, it would expand the law of first law of conservation of energy. It would violate the second law of thermo to expand it to implement the quantum vacuum. I think I forgive me because I've worked on some contracts that deal with that, so I really have to watch there. But I think that plasma sheaths are very interesting. I don't mean to be vague. I'm sorry, but
Sal, do you think plasma sheaths are very interesting?
Put it this way. Let's do the fluid dynamic analogy of what the Russians call the shvagal. I believe that I do not have the correct pronunciation. The whole idea of this supercavitating torpedo that rides within what? A bubble of air, right? Well, think what plasma is. It's the next state into, instead
yeah.
of being a gas, it's a plasma. In other words, the electrons have ionized. Why don't we think of plasma as a transition state? Transition to what? Transition from what we understand as three-dimensional matter to quintessence, a fifth essence. What is this fifth essence? You see, could very well be the quantum vacuum.
I strongly agree with that. Yes, I think maybe it's possible for a better description, or not better, a different perspective. It's possible there's a sort of memory in the quantum vacuum that is only observable and physically realizable when you involve plasma. in that transition stage in a form of geometrical disequilibrium from an engineering perspective.
Like a Bose-Einstein condensate fits somewhere into that range of
Sure. I mean, some people have proposed, there's that have proposed water. Some people propose hydrogen. Some propose, argon, Bose-Einstein condensate. Yeah.
So
I think.
Let me ask a couple quick questions. Oh, go ahead, Sal. Go for it.
Just a quick one, and then I'll stop. Victor Lacno's paper, page 3. He describes the physical mechanism of the piezoelectricity-induced room temperature superconductor. Because of my great hubris, I call it the Pais effect, RTSC, the superconductor. Anyway, why not?
Well,
so,
yeah.
So the whole idea on page 3, he basically says we use an alternating magnetic field to create the Bose-Einstein condensate. Once we have the condensate, we set it in motion by what? A alternating current, a pulsed current. That's it. Victor Lacno, Russian Academy of Sciences, in one freaking phrase, lacked the room temperature superconductor. I'm 100% sure one day that will be proven correct.
I believe firmly that, sorry if I could say, the Barden-Cooper-Schaefer theory on superconductivity has a deep flaw in it, in my opinion. They don't look at what happens when you deal with lattice holes and those things.
Yeah, and I read the Victor Lacno, the way to high temperature superconductivity. I do find pulses, alternating current, alternating.
I don't mean to speak for Sal here, and I don't mean to say to be disrespectful to your audience, Ashton, by being very vague here, but I there's something that's right there, whether it's room temperature superconductivity or negative energy from an engineering perspective. Ashton, we've talked privately about this. There's something right there that people have missed. It's right there. And in a way, it pisses me off, because I know that Sal knows, and I know that we know, but it's right there. It's been done,
Well, so this brings me up to another point, which is that oftentimes I've found that one of the drawbacks of disclosure is that a lot of scientists have thought, oh, everybody's going to figure this out. Is that I've figured this amazing thing out. Everybody's going to come and realize it themselves relatively soon. But it always turns out that no, we don't end up coming through with it. I mean, I was just reading some correspondence between Ken Shoulders and some other people in the 90s, where they're like, everyone's going to figure out the cold fusion's real now, blah, blah, blah. And it's 30 years later, still hasn't happened. So what I guess I want to ask you guys is, do you believe that somebody on this earth has technology that is beyond the paradigm of what humanity currently believes is possible?
Yes.
Yes, I know we do. Yes.
Now, why are we doing, we being the United States government in this case, or intelligence communities or defense contractors, why do you believe we are doing evil shit to keep it silent? Whether that be suppression, that be quite literally killing people in some cases.
It depends how high up the chain you want to go in this conversation. It depends how high up you want to go in terms of why.
Brother, remember Charles Fort, all right? Book of the Damned. I think we are property. Brother, we're nothing more than slaves. And fear is for fucking slaves. And the way they control us is for fear.
That's a good point. And so somebody did ask in the chat, I was looking at some of the questions, they wanted to know, how consequential is this information? Well, that's one answer, is that if we are quite literally slaves on a prison planet, then you could imagine that they would hide technology that would break us free from that. Absolutely, that makes sense to me.
Cognitio est potentia, nihil sine lux. Cognitio est potentia. Knowledge is power. You don't give the fucking slaves power because they rebel. and
What
become
about
the
you, Dave?
master.
What do you think?
Well, I think to address the overall concept here, I know for a fact there have been people in laboratories, whether NASA or elsewhere, that have discovered this effect on a small scale. And this is where it's become, I call more of it a mental brainwashing more than anything that has sort of put a blanket psychosis on a lot of the masses. Although many people are waking up, to be fair, which is beautiful to see. It's amazing. It really warms my heart. However, there have been people that have made certain discoveries where experts then come in. Those experts are also gatekeepers that of these type of technologies that basically gaslight them into thinking that what they see in the lab is not what they're actually seeing, and then they just label it as electrostatic repulsion when it's not. And then they deprive you of the right measurement tools to confirm or deny that. It's happened a few times. Yeah, hopefully that answers the question. But yeah,
it does. So, and I guess you guys are probably somewhat familiar with the AARO. I did speak to an officer that was going to ensured to me that the case of the MH370 would be part of the AARO's official record. I don't know what they're going to find or not find. I think at the end of the day, they probably are not going to confirm the videos are real, but they won't be able to deny the videos are real. What do you guys think of the AARO? And do you think the government will ever admit to this? Or do you think it's going to take people like us right now talking about this? What is your opinions on what it would take for disclosure to happen?
it's going to come through you and others, not Arrow. My opinion.
Sal, what do you think?
The Office of Immaculate Constipation.
Sorry, I didn't catch that. What was it?
The Office of Immaculate Constipation.
Got it. Yeah, and this makes me think about the letter to Ashton Forbes, where at the end says all you can do is talk about it. If somebody has this type of technology that is this powerful, they have access to, in my opinion, unlimited energy based on the conversation that we've had today, as well as manipulating space-time itself, which is teleportation and probably a lot of other really magical type effects. So they would have unlimited power compared to what we think from the public perspective today.
There might.
Do you know one person that I really don't get? And I've said this in the Jay Anderson interview on Project Unity, and I'll repeat it here. Richard Dolan, with his idea of breakaway civilization, which Dr. Joseph Farrell followed on, and the two of them together brought upon a very interesting way of thinking toward the possibility of a breakaway civilization. It's as if after 2017, the entire history of these unacknowledged fucking objects has been wiped clean. Now we only talk about UAPs, we talk about the Sol Fund, whatnot. All of a sudden we have new faces with new histories instead of the old faces with the correct histories.
Yes.
Yeah, so this is a good thing where let's just talk some smack about the UFO community a little bit, and maybe we can close after this as well. Is that I heard you talk about Richard Dolan, and I remember I was brand new to the whole community. He was one of the first people that I found.
He's a remarkable mind. He truly is a great researcher.
And he was talking about the technology and the breakaway civilization concept. And now the reason why I sorry to interrupt there is that what I've realized is that a lot of these people are kind of connected in a little clique. And the problem when you make cliques, in my opinion, is that people have a tendency of peer pressure, the Asch conformity experiment. So one of the narratives that I've seen, and this is why I wanted to bring it up with you earlier, is that a lot of these people are pushing the idea that humans could not have figured this technology out or understand this technology, that it's somehow it's just beyond human comprehension, which would then rule out this idea that we've developed this technology, that we've reverse engineered it, or that there was a breakaway civilization. They say that it must be aliens that have figured this out. And you see them all droning the same narrative about it. Even Lou Elizondo will say, well, we have the temporal problem. But then I listened to Sal say, well, once you look at Einstein's equations from 1915, anybody could have figured this out. So I guess what I'm getting at is like, what would you want to tell the UFO community, or what gripes do you have with that community right now on what I would consider to be this controlled disclosure that's being pushed by a community that's in a clique together? Like, what do you think? What would you tell those people, and what do we need to do to open our minds more to the various options related to disclosure?
Hold the fucking line. Hold the fucking line. Stand by your principles. Remember your history. Do not buy into these ephemeral dreams, illusions, delusions that have such a beautiful facade to them.
I like it. Dave, what do you think?
I would say the field right now is a shit show. You have disinformation agents. You have a few people in there telling the truth. Again, relative to their field of expertise, there may be people that, you know, are telling the truth in one area, but in other areas they have sources that feed them things that are either wrong. We're dealing with probably the most messed up psychologically manipulative field probably on the planet from a human perspective. I have not seen any other field that has been so infiltrated by intelligence, that has been so manipulative and so deceiving and conniving as I have in the alternative science UFO UAP field. There are very good people out there doing very good work, don't get me wrong, but there are also a lot of people that are doing things on purpose that they know is incorrect, that they're spreading with regards to spreading information, and then there are other people that are legitimately being used as useful idiots. So that's where I would leave that. I would say try your best to go with your intuition, your own discernment. I'm not sitting here claiming I can look at the field and know everything about everybody, but I'd like to think I have a general idea of what groups are dealing with what and how. And you start, it becomes tough, right? Because if you have one group that's telling the truth about one thing, but then they have to, you know, stop at a certain point, and then they have to tell a lie because it overlaps with, you know, American national security. It becomes a tough situation to deal with for the people hearing the information and the people providing the information with good intent. The ones that have bad intent, F them. But
so what I'm hearing is free energy is possible. We got floaty orbs of plasma that can probably teleport airplanes. The United States government's figured it out, and we can't really talk about it because it's adversarial issue of national security, where we're in an arms race against China and Russia, Iran, and North Korea here, and it becomes a lot more awkward than just aliens. That's what I've taken away from today's conversation. So, guys,
we spent 2 hours, and that's what he took away. What about time is on the order of 1 divided by frequency? And when you do that,
don't worry, I'm going to get back to all the science.
Don't forget what I said in the beginning. Do the chain rule on time is on the order of 1 divided by frequency, and you'll see what I'm talking about. You hook that with a Minkowski space-time metric, and you'll see how these things displace. And you see how the negative sign all of a sudden becomes positive. It's a beautiful thing. Anyway, man, I like keeping things in the positive. It's just me, you know.
No, 100%. And I think that the negative side is we're probably going to destroy ourselves with this technology. I mean, that's just how I see it. But hey, there's a chance that we might not. There's a chance.
If I could leave on a positive note before I have to go myself, and thank you so much, guys, for having me. This has been an honor. I will say, Ashton, that every so often when you're doing your streams every week or every couple days, when I tune in wherever I am, if I'm traveling or I'm at home or whatever, there's certain things I see people say in the comments, and I go, how the hell did they see that? There's certain things I look and I go, my God, I go, this shouldn't be put on a live stream chat. So what I'm trying to say is you're doing good work. You're doing very good work.
Thank you. Yeah, I see it too. And there's people in my live streams probably right now watching where I'm going, oh boy, there's several times where I don't highlight their comment because I'm like, they're so on the money that, it could actually like help out people that are our adversaries. But it's a fine line between what do we disclose safely that we aren't going to destroy ourselves versus change the whole planet forever, and I think that's what makes this topic so tough to dig into.
If I can mention one more thing, there's
Yes.
for a lot of people in this field, the ones looking into the science that you tend to attract with your audience, which is beautiful. There's a lot of I notice there's everyone goes through their journey where they discover a certain terminology or a certain experimental concept, and they don't fully understand it. And because they don't fully understand it, I don't mean this in a good or bad way, they then plaster it all over the internet. But then 6 months later, after they learn more about it, they remove those posts because they realize how sensitive what they said earlier was, and they didn't realize that. So it's a learning journey for a lot of people. When they realize, for example, we talk resonance in a cavity, that sounds harmless. But then if you go and you experiment with resonance in a cavity with maybe some more, engineering adjustments, you start to think, holy shit, should I even talk about resonance? So it's a learning journey for a lot of people. And it's very interesting to see because your platform, Ashton, has been the most open about it.
And I have plausible deniability. It's like, if I accidentally give away the secret sauce, well, I didn't know. So that's what I love about open source.
What makes me laugh? Makes me laugh? A lot of this shit is on the web. It's just that's what makes me laugh.
It's considered pseudoscience. It's so shat upon that everybody dismisses it out of hand.
Right.
Oh, speaking of something they're gonna dismiss right out of hand, because remember, Hawking brought to us the whole idea of chronological protection, the idea that you cannot have reverse temporal excursion. Look very carefully at what just said. Time equals, equals a constant. This constant has a lot to do with breaking the Schwinger limit, but I'm not gonna go into it. It's too interesting because it speaks to a certain thing. But what I'm about to say now, I hope your followers have not dropped off because they will enjoy this. Given that Hawking said you cannot go back in time, how about that time? Look how simple it is. Time is on the order of 1 divided by frequency. Apply the chain rule to that. You get negative delta t. It's on the order of delta omega divided by omega square. So in other words, under certain conditions, if I was to say stay in a chamber of a certain ionizing radiation given a certain frequency, so all of a sudden dial up the frequency, what might happen? Because it speaks to a negative delta t, gentlemen, reverse temporal excursion.
It might be possible. It might be possible to engineer something where you reverse the entropy, and therefore you get phenomena that nothing in classical physics has been able to explain.
I can live forever. Simple stuff. I can live forever.
Simple stuff resulting in a highly complex phenomena. That's all I'm arguing for.
Yeah.
So free energy is real, teleportation's real, orbs that float around freely are real, and also, by the way, guys, you can live forever. So if you needed more motivation,
when you say Ashton, when you say free energy, you mean coefficient of performance over 1, like a heat pump in a home.
Yeah, but you know how I talk. It's always going to be free energy and cold fusion and UFOs to me. So if other people want to come up with other fancy terms that's more palatable for normie out there, that's fine. But what's hard.
Let me ask Ashton. Let me ask you: do you think it's possible to get more energy out than what you put into a system?
100%. Yeah, I think that yes, we will rewrite the first and second laws, but we're not going to rewrite them out of necessity. We're going to rewrite them out of convenience, because it's a matter of, once you have this energy source of our UFOs, that is our 0-point energy field that's all around us, if you have an external energy source, you can easily get around the first and second laws. The first law you get around because you're constantly exchanging energy with the ether.
If I can leave one last hint, and this is very well, the Meissner effect with superconductors.
Nice.
People don't realize what they're, with respect, I don't mean this towards your audience, I mean towards the mainstream physics world. They don't realize what they're looking at when if you have a liquid nitrogen with a magnet over a superconductor, and that, as long as there's constant fuel of liquid nitrogen, the magnet stays levitating. What does that mean in a thermodynamic sense? A lot of people don't realize that. What that's already, it's violating the second law right there, by the way, and I'm just going to say it because fuck it, but people don't realize that.
Yeah, I mean, when I look at something floating freely, like I'm looking at over here on the side of the screen, this is supposedly LK99, one of the videos of the debunked superconductor. I mean, I'm looking at something just levitating freely here. You know, this is a magnet without it being stuck to anything. It's just not, it's just floating, suspended.
Yep.
And this is why I love the question.
I noticed in the comments here, I think Bob Greenier said flux pinning. Yeah, right, Bob, flux pinning. But there's a component, a thermodynamic component to the flux pinning that people don't realize is interacting with the local vacuum between its critical state and the what's just outside of it. The flux, there's a negative entropy component there that people don't realize.
So just to wind it down, Sal, what would be your final positive message that you would want to leave for people? And thank you very much for having this conversation with me again here today. It's been great.
It's been my pleasure, brothers. Ashton, you coming up to speed, brother. Like, and by the way, hello to Bob, since I heard he's over there. So it's like, we definitely should have a foursome sometime. You know, it's like, you know what I mean, like a physics thing. These days, you have to say it. You know. But anyway,
yeah.
So look, you and brother Rossi, it's an absolute pleasure to engage with you on these subjects. I've spoken to brother Rossi on many a time not to use words like negentropy and other things because it rubs certain people the wrong way.
Yeah.
Now, eventually, again, people will get used to the terminology and the ideas and so forth, but not right now because they will call us pseudoscientists. So that's what I'm. See, I understand what Brother Ashton is saying. F the mother effers, and let's do our thing. The only problem is it's the mother effers that are in power, and they're the ones that give the grants. They're the ones that dispense the favors. They're the ones that give the promotions. Again, we're all effing slaves. The problem is the mofos don't recognize they slaved them. Trust me, it'll hit them one day. They'll be absolutely amazed. Anyway. Awesome. Thanks, Brother Ashton. It's been absolutely a pleasure.
Thank you for having me as well. Thank you, guys. It's an honor. Thank you so much.
Yep, and I want to shoot my big thanks to both Brother Sal and Brother Dave for jumping on with me here today. It really helped ingrain a lot of the scientific concepts that I've learned over the last year. I wouldn't have been able to do any of it without either of these guys that are here. Thank you, MH370X, for following along, guys. I had a great interview. You guys have a great day, and we'll be talking again soon.
Bravo.